What if a single photo could rewrite American history? A mysterious 100-year-old Civil War photo was found in a dusty attic. But when
It began in a storage unit outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the kind of place people rent for $10 a month and forget about for 20 years. Nathan Reyes was not a historian. He was an auctioneer's assistant, hired to catalog the contents of Unit 214 after the owner passed away with no next of kin. Dust, moth-eaten quilts, a broken rocking chair, and at the bottom of a tin trunk, wrapped in a wool army blanket, a leather portfolio case stamped with the initials EH. Inside the case were 14 glass plate negatives. 13 of them were unremarkable. Soldiers posing stiffly in front of canvas tents, a blurred cannon, a river crossing. The 14th plate was different. When Nathan held it up to the light of his phone, he nearly dropped it. The image showed a wooden field hospital tent, a row of officers standing at its entrance, and every one of them was in color. Not the faded sepia of an old photograph colorized by a computer. Real, saturated color. The red piping on a colonel's coat, the green canvas of the tent, the pale gray sky threatening rain. Nathan didn't know much about photography history, but he knew enough to understand that something was wrong. Color photography didn't exist in the 1860s. He photographed the plate, posted it to a Civil War collectors forum, and went to bed thinking nothing more of it. By morning, his inbox held over 400 messages. One of those messages came from a woman named Professor Dana Whitfield, a photographic conservator at a private research institute in Philadelphia, who had spent 19 years studying 19th century imaging processes. Her message was short. Do not sell this plate to anyone. Do not clean it, coat it, or expose it to further light. I can be at your door in 3 hours. Nathan later admitted he almost ignored her. The forum was full of self-proclaimed experts. But something about the plainness of her warning made him wait. When Whitfield arrived, she didn't ask to buy the plate. She asked to see it under a loupe, in total darkness, wearing cotton gloves. For nearly 10 minutes, she said nothing at all. This isn't hand-tinted, she finally said. If it were hand-tinted, I'd see brushwork under magnification, pigment sitting on top of the silver image. This color is inside the emulsion. It was never black and white to begin with. Nathan asked the only question that mattered. Is that even possible? Whitfield's answer was careful. Experimental color processes existed as early as the 1850s. Levi Hill claimed one, though most historians consider his holotypes either failed or fraudulent. Nothing verified and functional like this is known to have existed until decades later. If this plate is genuine, it isn't just rare. It rewrites a page of photographic history that we thought was closed. She arranged for the plate to be transported, under armed courier at her own expense, to a materials laboratory affiliated with a university in Pittsburgh, where a joint team of conservators, chemists, and a Civil War historian named Ephraim Okafor would examine it together. The first tests were the ones anyone would expect: dating the glass, testing the emulsion for anachronistic materials, checking for digital tampering or modern print transfer. Every test came back the same way. The glass was period correct, manufactured using a process common to plate makers in the 1860s. The silver halide emulsion was consistent with wet collodion photography of the era. And yet, running through that emulsion were microscopic traces of plant-based dyes, cochineal red, extracted from insects, and a blue derived from indigo, both common in period textile dyeing, but never, in any documented case, used successfully in photographic emulsion. Someone figured out how to bind organic dye directly into the silver process, said the lab's lead chemist, Priya Chandrasekaran, during the team's second week of testing. Whoever did this wasn't guessing. This required real chemistry, controlled exposure times, a stabilizing bath we can't fully identify, and a level of precision that most professional photographers of the period didn't have access to. Okafor, the historian, took a slower path. He wasn't interested in the chemistry. He was interested in the man standing third from the left in the photograph, a lieutenant unremarkable in posture, whose face didn't match any officer roster Okafor could find for the unit insignia stitched on his collar. Every other man in this photograph has a paper trail, Okafor said. Enlistment records, pension files, letters home. This one has nothing. It's as if he was placed in a frame and then erased from every ledger that should have recorded him. Okafor spent 3 weeks cross-referencing the unit badge on the lieutenant's collar, a design he eventually matched to the 9th Vermont Infantry, against muster rolls held by the National Archives. Every man photographed beside him could be accounted for. The lieutenant could not. No name, no rank confirmation, no discharge paper. What Okafor did find, buried in a digitized collection of quartermaster correspondence, was a single requisition slip dated April 1865, requesting photographic materials, non-standard, per special order, signed only with the initials EH, the same initials stamped on the leather case Nathan had found in the storage unit. EH wasn't a soldier, Okafor told the team. EH commissioned this. EH built the case that hid the plate for over a century. Someone wanted this specific image preserved, and wanted it preserved quietly. Chandrasekharan's chemistry findings and Okafor's paper trail converged on an uncomfortable point. The photograph wasn't a battlefield souvenir. It was made deliberately, using materials that shouldn't have existed, of a subject who officially didn't exist, and then hidden for 160 years inside an unmarked trunk. The turning point came when Whitfield, re-examining the leather portfolio case for structural damage, noticed the lining was slightly thicker on one side than the other. Beneath the fabric backing, sewn flat against the leather, was a second glass plate, smaller, cracked at one corner, but intact enough to develop a scan. This plate showed no soldiers, no tents, no officers. It showed a single desk in what appeared to be a modest office, papers stacked with military precision, and a man seated behind it whose face was tilted just enough away from the camera that no one in the lab could make a confident identification, except for one detail. On the wall behind him hung a framed map of the eastern seaboard with red thread pinned between several coastal cities, a pattern that, when photographed and enhanced, roughly traced supply routes used by Union Quartermaster Corps in the final months of the war. Okafor found this plate more unsettling than the first. The color photograph was a technical marvel, he said. This one might be something else entirely, a coded record, a visual ledger meant to be understood only by someone who already knew what they were looking at. Whitfield, more cautious by training, urged the team not to overreach. We have a photograph with 2 mysteries, one chemical, one biographical. We don't yet have evidence that the 2 are connected beyond the physical case that held them both. But even she couldn't explain why someone would go to the trouble of hiding a second plate inside the lining of a case meant to protect the first, unless both were meant to survive together, and neither was meant to be found alone. The break came not from the lab, but from a letter. Nathan, still curious about the man who had once owned Unit 214, tracked down a distant cousin of the deceased who still had a box of unsorted family papers. Among receipts and church bulletins was a single sealed envelope addressed simply to whoever find this. Inside was a short letter, written in a careful aging hand, dated 1931. It read in substance that the writer's grandfather had served as a civilian photographic assistant attached loosely to Army quartermasters near the war's end, and that he had been asked, by whom, the letter did not say, to produce a picture that would not fade, of a man who would not be remembered, so that one day someone might understand what could not be spoken of at the time. The writer added that his grandfather had refused to destroy the plates despite being told to, because he believed history deserved the truth more than obedience deserved secrecy. The letter was signed with a single initial, H. It was, the family believed, the great-grandson of a man named Elias Hargrove, a name that finally matched the initials stamped on the leather case, and the requisition slip Okafor had found in the archive. To be clear about what the evidence supports and what remains speculation, the chemical analysis is not in dispute. The Pittsburgh lab's findings, a working color emulsion process using period-authentic organic dyes, executed with a level of control unmatched by any known 1860s photographer, have been independently reviewed by a second conservation lab and, as of this writing, no flaw in the testing has been found. That alone would be a significant historical discovery on its own. The identity of the lieutenant and the meaning of the second plate remain open questions. Okafor is careful to say that the absence of a paper trail doesn't prove a cover-up. Incomplete Civil War-era record-keeping was common, particularly for men attached to irregular or short-term assignments. But he also isn't willing to dismiss the coincidence of a specially commissioned photographic process, a soldier missing from every roll call, and a hidden second image, all bound together in a case built by a man who apparently spent real effort ensuring it would still exist generations later. I've spent my career telling students to be suspicious of neat stories, Okafor said. This isn't neat. It's two real mysteries sitting inside the same box, and I don't think we get to pick which one to believe just because it's more comfortable. Nathan Reyes eventually donated both plates to the Research Institute for continued study rather than selling them at auction. A decision he says he made after sitting with the color image for a few days and realizing it didn't feel like something that was supposed to make anyone money. The plates are currently housed in climate-controlled storage, undergoing further non-invasive imaging, with the research team's full findings expected to be submitted for peer review later this year. Whitfield, for her part, remains focused on the process itself rather than the mystery surrounding it. If we can understand how this emulsion was made, we learn something real about the limits of 19th century chemistry, something textbooks currently get wrong, she said. The story of the lieutenant is fascinating, but I'd rather we prove what we can prove. Okafor sees it differently, but he doesn't dismiss her caution. Maybe the chemistry is the whole story, and the man in the photograph really was just an unlucky soldier whose paperwork got lost in the chaos of April 1865, he said. Or maybe there's a reason someone built a hidden compartment for a second photograph and spent 70 years making sure a stranger would eventually find it. I don't think we're finished asking that question. I don't think we're supposed to be. For now, the photograph sits in a temperature-controlled drawer in Pittsburgh, the only known color image from the Civil War era, a man with no official record standing quietly among men history did remember, and a second, smaller plate whose meaning nobody has yet been able to fully explain. What would you do if you opened an old trunk and found proof that a piece of the past had been deliberately hidden from the record? Would you dig deeper, or would you close the lid and walk away? Let us know what you think in the comments, and stay tuned, because there's more to this story still coming to light.